I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Sing it with me now. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. When I breathe in, when I breathe in, oh, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out.
All Souls is probably, in fact, in my 50 years of ordained ministry, this is the only church I know of that is as facilitating and accommodating to literally all souls. I don't know of another Protestant church in the country that's less ethnic that would be celebrating, the pastor explained it this morning, the Dia de Muertos, the Day of the Dead, or who would sing the Negro National Anthem in African American History Month. We are very accommodating, very embracing, celebrative, and tolerant. And we really believe in love beyond belief. I celebrate you for being a part of our family, and we're honored to be so as well. Those of you watching from all over the world, this is a unique tradition, a unique church, a unique expression. I think we have one of the most intelligent senior pastors that I've ever known. Marlon is brilliant, and I just love his spirit. Barbara's outstanding. She just fits in and fills every gap in the most unusual ways. Our musicians are off the chain. We have some of the best in the city. I think they're going to turn out to be something.
We're working on it.
Eduardo, we appreciated you this morning so much. And of course, Louis, it's always a blessing. I'm always fascinated with how you could do that with a saw. All Hallows Day, All Halloween is really All Hallows Eve. So happy Halloween. Actually, the Catholic Church came up with that, All Saints Day. Hallow means holy. In response, if not reaction, to the Jewish Celtic celebration of the Feast of Simon, which was the Lord of Dead, or the Lord of the Dying Sun, hundreds of years ago. But all cultures in the world somehow celebrate or are fascinated with the mystery or missed story of death. We must live, we must die, we must live until we die. And then many of us believe we live again. When somebody asks you, how are you doing? They're basically asking you, some of you heard me say before, how are you dying? How are you dying this morning? Oh, I'm dying pretty good. Or you might say, I'm not dying so well today. Because from the time we leave our mother's womb till we head to the tomb, we're dying or we're transitioning. We're going through the various phases of life. In the Druid Celtic celebration of this time of year, they say on today, October 31st, or tomorrow, November 1st, the veil between the living and the dead is blurred, and that they believe that the dead who died, particularly the year before, could pass into this world, and they believe that that actually happened then. And the whole idea of trick or treat was that you prepared your place for a visitation from the dead. If there was a treat there, you'd get a blessing. If not, there'd be a trick or a curse. That's where the whole idea of a trick or treat came from. Jacques was the name of a demon that's carved in the face of a gourd or a pumpkin or turnip. We call that jack-o'-lantern here, harmlessly. But they worshiped aspects of darkness and dead because, or as we're coming into the winter season, when night prevails, the nights are longer, darkness is extended and expanded. So this idea of darkness and death and transitions, it's a little spooky if you're into spooky stuff.
And some of us like spooky movies, especially when we're in our home and can't nobody hurt us.
But we are fascinated with the mystery of death. So Celts believe that on this night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds was thinned and blurred. It's very interesting. A bonfire was actually bone fires because they take the skeletal remains of animals or humans and burn them and bring light into the darkness that one creepy night. And I have candy at my house now for anybody that comes by. Any of you want to know where I live, I'll give you a piece of candy if you'd like to come tonight. George Eliot, an English novelist, poet, journalist, translator, one of the leading writers of the Victorian era back in the 1800s, she was actually a female, but used that name because she was a writer. But she said, our dead are never dead to us until we have forgotten them. Our dead are never dead to us until we have forgotten them. All of us in here today have a memory of somebody we love who have transitioned to the next iteration, to the next dimension. I remember one of my last conversations with Dr. Wolf, who at one time did not believe in life after this one. I walked in there one day and he said, well, I had been sharing with him stories of my father who had just transitioned, things that my dad said to me on the deathbed, just kind of hinting to him to make him a little bit more comfortable with the possibility of his transition. And he said to me, the last time I had the conversation with him, he said, well, I believe in the resurrection. I said, what? You wrote that you didn't. What happened? Well, just call it revelation, which means to pull back the veil, revelum, to pull back the veil. Somehow, in those last few days of his life, he had some kind of experience that made him believe that there's a possibility, because none of us really know, that there is life after this one. I hope there is. I hope it doesn't all end here. But I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in eternal damnation, condemn or condemnation. I don't believe in that as I once did. I think that everybody goes through hell, but I don't know that anybody will end up in hell, to hell, permanently. That's obscene, it's absurd, it's ludicrous. But that's what our traditions have taught us over the years, and we're slowly evolving to another consciousness. The day or days of the dead refer to the days of October and November 2nd. In Mexico, and I grew up in Southern California, 5 miles north of the Tijuana border, so a lot of my friends celebrated Dia de Muertos and the Day of the Dead. I thought it was demonic or evil or satanic and dark, and I stayed away from it. And now I go to a church where we actually celebrate it. What kind of thing is that? So I hope you'll go by and see the beautiful work. You've done a great job out there. That's very festive. Death should be somewhat festive. Actually, Jesus is quoted to have said that we should mourn when people are born rather than when they die, because life is a dying experience. In fact, death and life are not enemies. They help define each other. They somehow help refine. One is inactive without the other. We wouldn't even mention life if we didn't have a perception of death. And so they're not the kind of enemies we've tried to make them. Interestingly, every culture in our world finds intrigue, curiosity, and reverence for death. Ancestral worship is not new. It's ancient. People always have a mystery. What happens to the person who was so vital and alive and alert and sometimes alarmed? That means a call to arms. We are alarmed and alert because we're alive. And we're sensitive to our surroundings. And we one day look into the face of somebody who is very active in our lives, and they don't speak to us, and their eyes are closed, and they seem motionless. And we're stunned by that, especially if it was a sudden, unexpected death. They were so alive yesterday, and now they're gone. I heard a preacher say one time, he got up in the pulpit, and he said, people are dying that have never died before. Did y'all get that? That's kind of what's happening now. Every day, especially at my age, I'll be 69 on my next birthday. So I'm getting calls from all across the country. I just celebrated my 50th high school celebration in San Diego. I didn't get to go, but I was part of it by Zoom, connecting with people at least. People are dying, and they're going away, and it's a stunning experience to have to let people go. Then we have these premonitions that, at least in memory, that they're still around. Even people who don't believe in stuff are stunned by things that go bump in the night. You know, you can say, I don't believe in that. As soon as you hear something, you start looking around. You know it ain't your dog. So you wonder, what is that? What's happening on the other side? The Greek word for soul is psyche, where we get the English word psyche. Psyche is considered the human soul, or the mind, the spirit, from the Latin, which means life and soul. What happens? Do we continue? What happens after this one? I've had a number of experiences in my life around death. And of course, I've done many funerals and memorial services. And I have a lot of relatives who are gone. In the most figurative sense, death is a kind of born-again experience. Again is the Greek word anothen, where we get the English word another, ether, some kind of ethereal, transcendent experience. You get to start all over again, once more. I believe sort of in reincarnation and pre-incarnation. I say that by speculation, of course, that maybe before we were incarnated or infleshed, there was another reality from which we all came. When I met Michael J. Fox the first time, I told him that my favorite movie of his was not Back to the Future, but I liked the title of the movie. I actually liked Doc Hollywood. It was my favorite movie with him. But Back to the Future, what if we all somehow go back to our future, whatever that is? That it doesn't stop at 70 or 80 or 90 or 3. That there's a possibility that there are overlapping realities, converging universes. What if there is something other than this? What if there is some transcendent reality, that we're here before we got here, and somehow we'll be here when we're gone, even if only in memory? In 1974, I don't think I've ever told this publicly. If I have, not many times, you would remember, David, if I did. I had a friend at ORU named Joyce Lamkin, and she was a singer with the Oral Roberts Singers that my mother used to, when we lived in San Diego back in the 60s and 70s, my mother would say, come. She'd call me from my end of the house. There were 6 kids there, all of us. But there was one television was in my mom's room. When Oral Roberts would come, she said, come on, look, there's a beautiful black girl on here named Joyce. And I'd rushed out of my mom's room and I'd watch Joyce sing. She was elegant and stately and very attractive. And then I met her when I came here in 1971. And I learned later that she had lupus, and it was terminal. But they didn't make us aware of that. But anyway, I sang with her and the singers, and she would travel with me and play the keyboards and sing when I would preach in Oklahoma and Kansas. And I remember that one day she called, they were doing a concert at ORU with her and Richard Roberts, and she said, why don't you come to the concert tonight? There was just 4 singers rather than the 12. So I said, I'll be there. She said, I have this beautiful black sequence dress. I want you to see it. We kind of had a little thing between us. I said, I'll be there. So I went. And she stood on the stage. There were 4 of them in this elegant, shiny, sequence black dress that was so beautiful. And I remember I saw an energy on her that I called death. And when I got back to my dorm, I said to Gary, my roommate, I said, you know what? I saw the spirit of death on Joyce tonight. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. I've heard that all my life. My parents used to say those kinds of things. It was in our tradition to say that. But I saw something that seemed strange. And then the next morning, all the singers were there. We were rehearsing for another concert that night when all of us were going to be on the stage. So we get there that morning for rehearsal, and Joyce is there again, but she's sitting very peaked, just kind of weak and quiet, a little bit pensive and distant. And I said, you okay, Joyce? She said, I think I might have a cold or something. Well, later on, Richard and Patty, who knew she had lupus but hadn't told us, said to her, why don't you go home, Joyce? You were here last night. You know these songs. Come back to the concert at 6 o'clock. Go rest. So she went home. And Patty then came over to me and said what I had said to Gary the night before. I saw the spirit of death on Joyce. And I said, really? I saw it last night. And we had a little brief conversation. We wouldn't tell the others what we were talking about because they would have thought we were weird. Well, 6 o'clock came for the concert that night, and she didn't show. We wondered where she was. That was the day before cell phone, so we couldn't call. We did call her apartment, no answer. We did the concert. Later on that night, Patty called me that Saturday night and said Joyce checked herself in the hospital. That's why she wasn't here. And I said, oh, really? She said, yes, she's evidently was having a difficult time. I said, well, I'll go see her tomorrow. I've got to speak tomorrow a couple times Sunday morning, but I'll go Sunday night to St. Francis, which I did with my friend Marilinda. We went to see Joyce. She was in bed. They had these tubes in her, and she seemed very halt. And I said, what happened, Joyce? What's the matter with you? She said, I think I'm dying. And I said, what are you talking about? Why would you say something like that? You're only 24 years old. And I remember turned quickly and walked to the window. And I collected my emotions because I was very touched by that. She said, you've always said to me, be thou faithful unto death, and I'm here. That's a scripture. Be faithful unto death, I'll give you a crown of life. So I said, don't even talk that way. I don't want to hear you say that again. I said, do you need anything? She said, yes. Please go by my apartment tomorrow. She gave us a key and bring these things. She said, I rushed over here to check myself in an emergency. I didn't bring anything. Can you and Marilinda go get me something tomorrow? I said, we'll be back tomorrow. I went home that evening. About 11 o'clock, I get a call from Patty. She's in the hospital. Patty Roberts, Richard's first wife. She says, Carlton, Joyce is having a difficult evening. Pray for her. And I could hear Joyce like screaming these groans, this sound. And it startled me. And I said, what should I do? Should I come? She said, no, let me call Oral. We'll pray and I'll call you back. So I turned over in my little bed. I turned over on my face. And I started praying for God to lift that from her. I don't know why I use that language. Lift this from her. Whatever it is, God, please, please. And I was crying. And I remember I was perspiring. I prayed so hard. And then I dozed off to sleep. And in a few minutes, I felt a tap on my left shoulder. So I turned over in the bed. And there at the foot of my bed, just as clearly as I see you, stood Joyce in that beautiful black sequins dress. And she said, Carlton, everything is okay. The Lord has lifted me, and you can stop praying. I never said a word because I thought I was dreaming. I leaned back on my elbows, and I just stared at her. I mean, I was sort of freaked out. I wasn't going to tell her that, but she probably knew it. She said that, and then she walked around the foot of my bed to the door. Instead of going through the door, she just went up through the ceiling, and I heard not music, but something that sounded like chimes. By then, I was fully awake and a little spooked, and I woke up my roommate, Gary, and I said, I think Joyce is dead. He said, what do you mean? I said, she was just here. I had this freaky dream. 30 minutes later, there was a knock on my dorm door, and it was Richard Roberts. He's never come to my dorm. He never came to any dorm, I don't think. I opened the door, and I said, what are you doing here? He said, Joyce has gone. I said, I wanted to say, she was just here. What do you mean she's gone? But I didn't say that. He said, call the rest of the singers. She's passed on. And I said, about when? About how long ago? He said, 30 minutes, about 30 minutes ago. So you're talking about Day of the Dead or the visitation of the dead. It was like a dream, but the rest of the story is this. I'm back over cleaning her apartment with Marilinda, and her mother is there. And her mother is from Ohio, and she said, did you see Joyce in the concert last Friday night? I said, yes, ma'am, I did. She said, did you see that? What did you think of that dress she was wearing? I said, it was absolutely gorgeous, bright and sparkling. And she said, well, I said, why are you asking? She said, I'm thinking about burying her in that. I said, why would you bury her in a black dress? In our tradition, you don't bury the saints in blackness, you wear white. I said, well, we don't bury the saints. She said, I know, but she called me Friday night. She said she loved this dress so much, they had made it specially for that concert. And she said to me, I want to be buried in it. And I said, well, it was gorgeous. If that's what you want to do, do it. Well, they didn't have the money to put her in a coffin. They put her in the Nin funeral home right down here. So I went to see her with Marilinda. And there she was on this bier, beautifully decorated, no coffin, just in that long black dress. Her arm was to the side. Normally, they fold the hands in the front, but her arm was to her side. I noticed that beautiful, bright red fingernail polish that she had on Friday night in the same position I saw her, same position that she appeared in the dream at the foot of my bed. I thought, and I think to this day, that was a transcendent moment for me. Day of the Dead? They don't really die. They just transition to another dimension. They go somewhere, if only in our memory. Most people don't tell stories like I just told, but many of you have had little crazy dreams or experiences or little wisps that maybe something is beyond this, and it's not necessarily evil or ugly or dirty or dark. That it's pure and holy and wholesome and wonderful and speculative. And it gives you a little idea that maybe there is something beyond this, that there is another realm, that we don't stop here. We didn't start here. We are continuing in the time continuum, and we're going on to other revelations and dimensions. And Jesus is recorded of saying, in my Father's house there are many mansions, meaning dimensions, floors, spheres, places, spaces, realities, levels, apartments. What if there is more? I think that's a good idea. Some of you act like you've been around before anyway. You've been here before because you know too much. You've got grandchildren. When I was a little kid, I used to hear Mother, I know Mother, why you've heard that. He's been around here before. She's been around here before. It's like they're repeating something. Maybe returning. Maybe there is. You're going to hear a song, the lyrics of which are like this, and just prepare for it as we close. The lyrics of the music that Reverend Lloyd's going to be playing is, Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart. Blow in the wind. Roots, hold me close. Wings, set me free. Spirit of life, come to me. That's us coming to each other. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.